Palestrina. Palestrina made some music which was far too beautiful to suit His Holiness the Pope, who thought the music dangerous in its seducing beauty, luridly diverting people's minds from their religious formalism and order to a better world of spiritual harmonies, which in the long run could outdo religion as something better and a more spiritual alternative. So the Almighty Pope called forth the Inquisition to investigate the magic of that lewd musician, which they did and found that his polyphony was insubstantial like the clouds. So Palestrina was allowed to go on making music of his own invention, which is quite ingenious still today, and matchless as perfected polyphonal choir singing, much more to the glory of that God who had been so misunderstood by that almighty church, which thought it fit to make the Inquisition try some music. Palestrina komponerade musik som var för vacker enligt påvens öron, då den var förförisk i sin skönhet och riskerade att vända folks uppmärksamhet ifrån den religiösa formalismens ordning till en bättre värld av andlighet och harmoni, som i längden kunde slå ut religionen som ett bättre och mer spirituellt alternativ. Så påven konsulterade inkvisitionen och bad den undersöka den riskabla musikern och hans förföriskt sinnliga magi, vilket de gjorde och kom fram till att hans polyfoni var lika grundlöst svävande som molnen. Så den gode Palestrina fick fortsätta skapa sin musik, som fortfarande idag är helt genialisk och oöverträffad i sin polyfona perfektion, så mycket lämpligare såsom hyllning till den Gud som kyrkan missförstått så grundligt att den kallat på inkvisitionen till hjälp för att förstå musik. Orlando di Lasso, the merry fish of virtuosity, unchallenged as a virtuoso, last of the great Flemish music masters, learned his music nonetheless in Italy, and where, if not in Naples? He toured vigorously all of Western Europe, but preferred the northern Italy, although his fixed position was in Munich, on the wrong side of the Alps. In contrary to Palestrina, who heroically challenged his misfortunes when he lost his children and his wife already in advanced age in the plague, remarried and refused to be let down, Orlando de Lassus, successful always, with 2,000 compositions on his conscience, was in latter days seized with melancholy, and found it difficult to get out of that bog, as if his whole triumphant life of just encores had merely been a mirage of some self-deception. Curiously enough, they both died in the same year, Palestrina quite unbroken by his tragedies, Orlando Lasso at a loss for all his unbroken successes. The war of madness on sensibility, Benazir Bhutto in memoriam. This cannot pass unnoticed. It is too blatant in preposterous absurdity. It is too over-obvious and can never be defended. Mrs. Bhutto wanted peace and sense to rule in Pakistan and therefore was assassinated by a suicide bomber. Can it get more sick? The state of fundamentalists and terrorists, the fanatism of psychopathic paranoia, waging holy war against a woman just because she was a woman of some influence, a blind attack on all the values of civilization, justice, reason, sense, constructivism and education, only to enforce dictatorship, intolerance, and backward brainwash unto death at any cost. And this was not the first time. The same brute force was launched in Burma against peaceful demonstrants who only asked for what was reasonable, also led by one courageous and heroic woman who has been imprisoned for some 16 years. In China, this war of insanity against good sense, against all human rights, against suppressed Tibetans, and against the perils of philosophy and Buddhist wisdom has been going on for 60 years and still not tires in its efforts to exterminate the freedom of the human mind and thought and conscience and the life and culture and the history of the Tibetan nation. They will never tire, all those mad dogs of barbarity, in their efforts to annihilate all sense and beauty that excels their own, and they will never learn, the miserable bastards, that they never will be able to succeed. Vanvettets krig mot förnuftet. Det kan ej passera obemärkt. Det är för skriande i sin absurda överdrift. Det är för övertydligt och förblir för alltid oförsvarligt. Hon reste hem till Pakistan för att få fred, demokrati och sunt förnuft i landet och blev därför mördad av en självmordsbombare. Kan det bli mera sjukt, ett sådant tillstånd av förtvivlad fundamentalism och terrorism, en psykopatisk paranoias fanatism som krigar mot en kvinna bara för att hon är inflytelserik som sådan, en blind attack mot alla civilisationens värden, rättvisa, förnuft, konstruktivism och utbildning, och blott för att forcera etablerad diktaturs intolerans med hjärntvätts bakåtsträvande till döds till vilket pris som helst. Och detta var ej första gången. Samma blint brutala maktspråk fördes nyligen i Burma emot fridens demonstranter som blott bad om självklarheter, också ledd av en modig och heroisk kvinna som har hållits fängslad nu i mer än 16 år. I Kina har det galna kriget mot förnuftet, mot mänskliga rättigheter, mot förtryckta tibetaner och mot faran av buddhistiskt sunt förnuft och dess filosofi nu förts i 60 år och fortsätter med syndens envishet att föra kampen krampaktigt mot samvetsfrihet, tankefrihet och yttrandefrihet och emot all tibetansk identitet, historia och kultur. Det tycks aldrig tröttna, alla dessa galna hundar av okunnighet, i sina fåfänga försök att krossa allt förnuft och skönhet som begår det brottet att det överstiger deras egen. Och det lär sig aldrig, dessa miserabla uslingar, att det ej någonsin kan lyckas. Death is down. Death is never death, but just an aimless threat, in vain to challenge life and give it some adversity, just to forward progress and transgress resistance, to bring life the more to victory, eliminating destructivity forever, which is only there as spice and salt to make the stew less boring. Death is only what makes life, surviving, overcoming, conquering, and glorying in eternity like phoenix. So don't for a moment think that Poet Bay is finished. It has only started. Monteverdi, Orpheus, and their lost wives. Claudio worked for years on that incredible experiment, the opera, the very first one, celebrating now 4 centuries, but working too hard on it, his poor wife got lost and died, and Monteverdi never could get over it. His opera was the supreme success. It started avalanches of successes. But just as Orpheus failed in getting back his wife, so Monteverdi lost his wife forever. He resigned and moved to Venice to commence a different career as church musician in St. Mark's, and was successful all his life as such, for 30 years encore, but never, and not even in his finest music, managed to retrieve the unjust theft of his beloved wife from death, the falsest thief of all, who never can get punished and never will return a stolen life. Gesualdo and his wife. Carlo Gesualdo, Duke and Prince of Venosa, married his first wife Maria d'Avalos in 1566. His second wife, not mentioned here, survived him. He loved her truly and indeed, but far too much. So when he was deceived by the most beautiful Maria d'Avalos, a princess and twice widow, 25 years and a cousin, and surprised her in his own bed with her lover, he lost all control and massacred the couple, most atrociously, revealing greater passion than Othello, and a jealousy more horrifying being justified. The law could never get at him, since many helpers were involved, and people thought in general that he was right, that the adulterous couple had themselves to blame for openly inviting Satan to their own black wedding. But his life was ruined, and he never could forgive himself, but led an isolated life like in a prison of self-torture, caught in the horrific trap of his own tragedy, which led him to compose the most extraneous music of that century, transforming his despair, depression, grief, and tears into the most expressive madrigals that still today appear as bold and modern, in their heart-rending, characteristic, constant pain, a lasting cry of love from hell. Alessandro Stradella, 1645–82, discovered in Rome by the Swedish exiled Queen Christina, who established his fame as musician and composer. It's not easy to be over-talented, especially not as a musician, which Stradella was, the handsome Alessandro, who had lovers everywhere and never got enough of them. The only problem was they oftentimes were married, and their husbands didn't like him to hang on their wives. So they, with some good reason, tried to kill him, just to settle matters with him once for all. So he was constantly compelled to run away, was chased away from Venice by professional and hired killers, and also from Torino, to find some security in Genoa, where, nonetheless, he found new lovers and eventually was killed by one of their infuriated husbands. He was only 37. After 7 operas and 7 oratorios and a lot of other compositions, the most talented musician of his age, killed for his extraordinary talents as a lover. Persecuted by war, Heinrich Schütz, 1585–1672, married for only 6 years, 2 daughters, all died during the 30 Years' War Holocaust, and only 1 small granddaughter survived of his family. His wife and daughters died, not able to withstand the press of war that kept on executing his musicians and make music almost quite impossible in dins of 30 years of war. He kept escaping from his base in Dresden, like for 100 years much later, the most tragic of war central stages, leaving colleagues, friends, musicians and his family behind from pure necessity, to keep supporting them and make his living, travelling around at random to find peace for vocal music in the churches that were left alone by war, for instance Copenhagen. And when finally the 30 years of war were over, and his friends and colleagues, church musicians, all his family except 1 single daughter's daughter, all were dead and gone and buried in the ruins of the war-torn Germany, he still kept on composing, working to the end, until at last, at 87 years, he found his peace, by reaching up to introduce the greatest age of music, having proved that it was better and more able to survive than any war politics, vanity and madness, all made null and void by the sheer beauty of the harmony of music. Hippie love. We used to love one another, and it was never wrong, no matter how much we shared our love with others and never kept it for ourselves. Our love was never a deceit, the less so the more it encompassed others, and sleeping together was never love enough. We needed more than that, and therefore always gave more than that, sharing our love universally with whomever. How can love then be confined within the restrictions of marriage, of sticking to one person, of vows and oaths and promises that never could be kept? Forgive me, my love, but I could never stick to you alone, but we owed our love to everyone. The innocents. We just refused to be part of it, the generation of the world wars, those who fought them enthusiastically, those who defended the bombs of terror balance, those who thought Hiroshima and Nagasaki were justified, those who liked the Nazis until they fell, and then the communists until they fell, those who adopted materialism and sold their lives to the slavery of mammon, and raised rigid families adapting squarely to lives of stale cubicularism, in a society of perfect capitalist consumerist order. We wanted none of all that soul pollution, but wanted freedom and the right of love, to triumph over every kind of bondage, and thus preferred beauty to the ugliness of modern man, life in nature to the sterility of urban society, and love to hate and war and freak politics. We preferred natural innocence to the guilt of modern man, which we rejected with the wars and bombs, and we were right, we are right still, and history will make us right. Unwavering light of love, the beauty of your soul transcends eternity. If you allow me this small understatement, which, however well aimed at the truth, still misses it by many light years, since you simply are unmatchable and unattainable. The love you gave me by the beauty of your grace I never will abandon or give up, but cultivate forever with affection, guard with piety and bless with passion, since it is the only life I have when you are absent. Never can our souls depart or separate from this unique love that we had and will maintain and carry on forever, like a firebrand and lighthouse in a stormy sea, to keep on shining to light up all darkness of all nights. Desert wines and roses. You come to me in flashes of delight, and I adore you like a virgin spring in an oasis in Sahara. Let us not be overwhelmed, however, by our love of endless fields of wines and roses, but let us be sensible and handle it with care. I know you are so brittle as an old Venetian glass, and I will never touch you but with velvet gloves, to only stroke you with the gentlest touch of ease. I need your love and thirst the more I miss it, but I shall never drink it to the bottom, since I know that even an oasis in Sahara might run dry if overused and used unwisely. So I'd rather thirst than risk to waste our love on anything except the holiness of our togetherness. The sweet pain of nostalgia. What matters all the pain of our memories, since we have them together, suffering together all those losses of friends lost and gone, and ever brought to mind to never be forgotten. It's the sweetness of our memories that counts in ever warmer and more beautiful nostalgia, and not the pains and pangs of heartaches, since all hurts are only there to vanish and to ever be forgotten as superfluous to life. The colours of our tender souls, forever marked by incandescent memories, will forever warm us up in the obstinacy of a constant hibernation, which will warm the more as we with pleasure share them, with a company that still remains, so long still after our explosive party, that turned on the world to keep it rolling even long after that we have gone. Soaring. All kinds of love are good and right, and there are no exceptions. Highest, though, is the affinity of souls that has a quality of more than mortal standards, challenging the moon and stars and galaxies, since it is universal in its faculty, which nothing can bring down to earth, although you find it in all kinds of earthly forms and languages, expressions, habits and results, which all contribute to the continuity of love that never can get low or down, but is the very essence of constructiveness, one-sidedly and yet bilaterally always, since the very magic, life and way of love is always in the forward-leading dialogue. The 7 stages of love. It starts so easy and so pleasant. You start in paradise and just enjoy it, then the long way down begins. The 2nd stage is still an easy crisis, when communication fails and is replaced with gradual mistrust. Then comes the 3rd stage and the real crisis, when deceit has formed and one is made a victim, while the other enters on the path of dubiousness. The 4th stage is the melancholy limbo, when delusion is a fact and only memories remain of how delightful, wonderful and great it could have been. Then comes the 5th stage, the enforcement, when you fight refusing to give up and claim your love with any right by any means and fall in total personal defeat. Which brings you to the 6th stage, when you are forced by destiny to be a realist, admit your failure and look through all falseness, recognize that love can be abused and is misused. The 7th stage is the transcendence, when in spite of all you stay on line in love and broaden it to mature universalism, including all and laying down all selfishness, to recognize the true love of enduring quality, completely free and independent of all mortal means. Purcell and his wife. Henry Purcell, 1659 to 95, was perhaps the greatest English composer ever. They say his wife in anger locked him out and caused his death. It is not so. She had no reason to. She loved her husband. He had given her 5 children, but he was always late and overworking, and her order was not quite exemplary. When he caught that cold that autumn night and found himself locked out from home, the whole house sleeping, she had probably just acted on routine, with no intention to obstruct her husband, whom she loved and served. It was a happy marriage. There would not have been 5 children else, and Henry Purcell was, alas, a workaholic, the first genius of that kind in music, followed later by too many others, young, divine, creative artists, working themselves fiercely to death before they reached their 40s, like Franz Schubert, Mozart, Mendelssohn, and far too many others. Purcell died at 36, but had produced, in only 15 years of music labour, 32 outstanding volumes of impressive music. Bach made 50, Handel 100 for comparison. So one can imagine what our Purcell would have come to as the greatest music genius of his age if he had just been home in time for bed, before his wife, unfortunately, locked the door and locked him out of contrary neglect. Masked identity. Let me keep you hanging in the air, in blind incertitude of what I am and where, for the suspension of our love, to keep it up, in view of all but beyond reach, just for the fun of it, in order that you must not lose it out of sight. For love, like any baby, needs untiring attendance and demands more energy than anything in life. For it is life itself in its most basic flame that keeps life burning and alive and warm, which we all need who never wish to tire of remaining lovers. Vinterkräksjuka, den är bara ett symptom på vida hemskare syndrom. Det djupa vintermörkrets fasa med dess mardrömsnätter utan tal, med trötthet som förlamar kropp och själ och gör morgonsömnigheten till en sjukdom så att det känns bättre att ej stiga upp mer. Så låt mig då få sova liksom björnen ut den hemska vintern, så att jag ej mer får vakna upp igen förrän en vårsol börjar breda ut sig över en långt vackrare och bättre värld. Ty ingen värld kan vara sämre än en skandinavisk faktisk mardrömsvinter. Vintermigrän. Finns det något jävligare? Huvudvärkens hamrande håll igång, med huvudet i skruvsted under skallande skallning, oavbrutet kräkandes och bräkandes av pinan, medan sömnlösheten vidmakthåller, uppehåller gränslösa tortyren som bara håller på och håller på och håller på. Häftigare hela tiden tills man storknar och kreverar för att längta efter att krepera. Nej, värre kan det inte bli. Alltså kan det bara bli bättre. Når man djupets botten hittar man alltid en bakväg ut, om det så måste bli genom klosetten. Till slut blir ändå allting bara skit. Vinterreumatism. Fallet är hopplöst från början. Det är kört, gosse. I 5000 år har människan kämpat med problemet, verken som väcks av vädret och flyter omkring och alltid finns där, alltid ovälkommen och oåtkomlig som den mest oinbjudna av gäster, som är den enda som alltid stannar kvar. Det enda man kan göra är att bortse från honom, ignorera honom, ägna sig åt annat, åt vad som helst som skingrar tankarna från kroppen, från verken, från helvetes plågan i köttet och benen, åt resor och umgänge och vad arbete som helst. All verksamhet är god terapi, och det sämsta man kan göra är ingenting. Låt plågorna bli dig en utmaning till att lägga in en högre växel i livet, och det är den enda medicin som hjälper mot den mest obotliga av sjukdomar, som är ingens fel men bara vädrets. Winter rheumatism. The case is hopeless from the start. You're done for, brother. 4,000-5,000 years men has struggled with the problem of the ache awakened by the weather and just floating, always being there, unwanted and unreachable, like the most uninvited of all guests, who is the only one to constantly remain. The only thing to do is to ignore him, disregard him, concentrate on other things, on anything that gets the focus off the body, off the pain of hell in bones and carcass, on no matter what activity, on journeys, work or social life. Whatever the activity, it is good therapy, and the worst thing to do is nothing. Let the torment be a challenge to you, to move into higher gear, and that's the only medicine that works against the most incurable of ills, which is no fault of anyone's, but only of the weather. Bullshitting bushes. Forget about those bossy bully states of bushisms spewing turd all round the world, with governing establishments for queer justification. They never led us all through history except astray, today in worse predicaments than ever, while they joke about it and pretend the situation is not real, while they know better, since they are accountable for all that mess that leaves humanity in shit, while they just profit by it. We are better off, we poets, who are free in Never Never Land, transcending no man's land, in exile from this mortal world of nonsense, into our paradise of meaningfulness, where, devoid of all corrupting power, we can see more clearly from the outside, and use common sense to stay away from all that torpid smell of vanity that comes from egoistic, short-sighted ambition, aiming nowhere but to own destruction. We are safe above it, leaving mundane idiocy to get lost with a consumer lunacy in custody of bushes. Incurably invulnerable. Since I loved you and gave you my first love, there has never been another, honestly, since you alone was ever faithful, at least in spirit, no matter who they were and what they were, how many and how dubious, all the others, all those false alternatives, all those who thought it opportune to love you less than I. My love never changed and never lost its spirit, never grew in age, but only in maturity, and it remains all yours, my love, my only love, in spite of all the efforts in the world to sabotage, obstruct, and kill our love, which was invulnerable from the start, since it existed long before we even were conceived. The teacher. When we were small, we played together, and since then our lives have grown with memories that ever grew more sweeter the longer that we kept our love prevailing, growing and expanding, like a flower that would never wither, but uniquely only just continue growing, larger and more beautiful and splendid, in ever-increasing sumptuousness of colours, better even than the phoenix, who gets burned sometimes to get renewed, but our love caught never fire, although it kept growing ever warmer with a candour of our hearts that never seemed to mature quite enough. Since we continue learning from each other of our love, how this, the greatest miracle of all, is actually the only thing in life that can teach something about life. Within. Let me remain within you, in a love embrace that never ends, to give us life and let us stay alive, in this our love of sweetest wonders, beyond dreams and all reality, in rains of our common soul, to drown the world in love and life, to teach the universe how all this wonder works, the issue of the sharing of true love that made the first of paradises, which we never really lost, but which is there within our reach, within ourselves, and which we only can be barred from by ourselves. It all depends on us and our love, and all I wish is for it to continue, me within you and our paradise, in your embrace of ever-growing sweetness, warmth, and kindness. Vivaldi and his ladies. He was a priest and never left his first vocation, although he was forced by illness out of service. In his later years, the priests complained and wondered why he never more said Mass. He hadn't then for half his life. He wrote that famous pitiful reply that illness of the lungs in all his life had made it hard for him to say the Mass at all. And when he had been interrupted by his chest pains, coughings, and so forth. Instead, he found his comfort in his music, and his orchestra of ladies was ideal company throughout his life, performing all his concerts, oratorios, and operas. Although so intimate with ladies every day and even with most stimulating music, he remained a virgin all his life, again because of illness. It might have been tuberculosis of some kind or something like it, and like Mozart he died prematurely, and was forgotten in a pauper's grave, and even in Vienna. Unlike Mozart's, though, Antonio Vivaldi's graveyard is all gone, and all that now is left of him is all that virgin and enchanting music which he so enjoyed with all his ladies. Bach's poor wives. He made 20 children, and when his first wife died, from exhaustion, overstrain, and so forth, he just got another and continued making children, while she had to work at home, maintaining and supporting, cooking, serving, washing, doing everything for his immense, expanding family. And when she died, she had no pension, but was put away into an almshouse, brutally neglected and ignored by all her husband's sons and children. This domestic tragedy is easily forgotten for his merry stimulating music, which remains his better mark in history than the expressive silence of his patient wives.